Jack Thornton was having the kind of day that made the apocalypse seem like a welcome alternative. It started with his alarm failing to go off, which wouldn't have been so bad if he hadn't been nursing what he suspected was the hangover of the century. Last night's impromptu celebrate the new diplomatic assignment party had seemed like a brilliant idea at the time. Now, with his head pounding like a dubstep concert and his mouth tasting like something had crawled in there and died, Jack was reconsidering his life choices. "Damn it," he muttered, stumbling around his apartment like a newborn giraffe. He barely had time to shower before rushing out the door, hair still dripping, tie askew. The universe, apparently not satisfied with his suffering, decided that today would be the perfect day for his ancient coffee maker to commit suicide in spectacular fashion. The resulting explosion of scalding liquid not only destroyed his last clean white shirt, but also left an impressive brown Rorschach pattern across his kitchen ceiling. "Perfect. Just perfect," Jack growled, changing into his backup shirt, the one with the suspicious stain that he hoped looked professional enough in dim lighting. The interstellar shuttle to the Galactic Summit Station was scheduled to leave at 0800 hours. Jack arrived at the spaceport at 0801, just in time to watch it gracefully ascend into the morning sky. "Sir, I'm sorry, but the next diplomatic shuttle leaves in 3 hours. The perky attendant informed him with the kind of cheerfulness that made Jack consider a career as a serial killer. "I can't wait 3 hours. I'm representing Earth at the Zeltarian treaty negotiations that start," and he checked his watch and felt his stomach drop. 45 minutes. The attendant's smile didn't waver. "There's a cargo ship leaving in 10 minutes that makes a stop at the summit station. It's not exactly first class, but..." Which is how Jack found himself wedged between crates of synthetic fertilizer and what appeared to be living, breathing alien houseplants for a 20-minute journey that somehow stretched into 35. By the time he stumbled off the cargo ship, his suit was wrinkled beyond recognition. He smelled vaguely of ammonia, and a small tendril from one of the plants had taken a liking to his ear. Jack burst into the summit station's main conference chamber exactly 13 minutes late, disheveled and panting. "The Earth representative finally joins us," announced a tall, sleek alien with skin the color of polished bronze and eyes that gleamed like black diamonds. Ambassador Krell of the Zeltarian Empire stood at the head of an ornate table, surrounded by his entourage of equally elegant advisors. Each wore robes of iridescent material that seemed to capture and reflect light in hypnotic patterns. "Sorry I'm late," Jack mumbled, sliding into the empty Earth chair. "Transportation issues." Krell's lips thinned into what might have been a smile, though it didn't reach his obsidian eyes. Quite understandable. Earth's primitive transportation systems are well known throughout the galaxy. A polite titter of laughter rippled through the Zeltarian delegation. Jack noticed with horror that the other Earth diplomats were nowhere to be seen. The chair beside him held only a tablet with a blinking message: "Emergency recall. All senior staff returning to Earth. You'll handle preliminary talks. Good luck." "Wonderful," Jack whispered as Ambassador Krell began what promised to be a very long presentation on interstellar resource sharing protocols. His head throbbed, his stomach churned, and somewhere in the recesses of his mind, a little voice whispered that this was going to be the longest day of his diplomatic career. Little did he know that in approximately 27 minutes he was about to make galactic history. Ambassador Krell's presentation had been going for exactly 26 minutes, during which Jack had learned absolutely nothing about the treaty, but had developed an intimate knowledge of the Zeltarian ruling family's accomplishments dating back 17 generations. "And so," Krell continued, his voice a melodious drone that somehow managed to be both hypnotic and irritating, "having established the unparalleled diplomatic legacy of our people, we can proceed to the actual terms of our generous proposal." Jack straightened in his seat, trying to look attentive despite the construction crew that appeared to be using his brain for jackhammer practice. "The treaty is quite simple, really," Krell said, with the condescending tone one might use when explaining astrophysics to a particularly dim child. "Even for humans." Another ripple of laughter from the delegation. Jack's left eye twitched. "We will permit Earth to maintain nominal sovereignty over its solar system, while the Zeltarian Empire assumes administrative control of all resource extraction operations on non-inhabited celestial bodies. Our efficiency will benefit everyone." Jack blinked. "Wait, you want control of mining rights for the entire solar system?" Krell smiled indulgently. "Not want, Mr. Thornton. We'll have. The terms are non-negotiable. We're simply informing Earth of how things will proceed." "That's not a treaty. That's a surrender document," Jack said, his hangover momentarily forgotten. The Zeltarian ambassador sighed dramatically. "Perhaps I overestimated your capacity to understand. Allow me to simplify. We take the valuable materials from your system, and you get to continue existing without interference. Many species would be grateful for such an arrangement." One of Krell's advisors, a thin Zeltarian with an elaborate headdress, leaned forward. "Perhaps we should include pictorial representations for the humans' benefit." That did it. Jack felt something snap inside his brain. The perfect storm of his hangover, the missed shuttle, the coffee disaster. And now this patronizing alien prick treating Earth like some backwater colony, it all converged into a singular moment of pure, unadulterated human rage. "Listen here, you pompous, overdressed space elf," Jack growled, rising from his chair. "I've had just about enough of your condescending bullshit for one day." The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support system seemed to quiet in shock. "Mr. Thornton, I hardly think," Krell began. "No, you hardly think," Jack interrupted, jabbing a finger in the ambassador's direction. "You come in here with your fancy robes and your 17 generations of whatever the hell, acting like we should be grateful you're only planning to rob us blind instead of bombing us back to the Stone Age." Jack was on a roll now, pacing around the table, gesturing wildly. The Zeltarians watched him with expressions of increasing alarm. "Earth may not have your shiny tech or your millennia of diplomatic backstabbing, but we've got something you clearly don't: basic decency and a functioning moral compass. So you can take your non-negotiable terms and shove them so far up your iridescent ass that you'll need a search party to find them." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. "Furthermore," Jack continued, building to a crescendo, "if you think we're going to roll over while you strip mine our system, you've seriously underestimated humanity's capacity for spectacular, mind-blowing stubbornness. We're the species that invented reality TV and still eats hot dogs knowing what goes into them. We're not afraid of you." By now, Jack's face was inches from Krell's, who had gone completely rigid with shock. "So here's my counter-proposal. Go back to your empire, rethink your approach, and come back when you're ready to talk like equals instead of conquerors. Because this," he gestured between them, "this is not happening." With that final pronouncement, Jack straightened his rumpled tie, smoothed his hair back, and marched toward the door. Just before exiting, he turned back to the stunned assembly. "And for the record, our primitive technology managed to detect 3 secret Zeltarian listening posts in our outer solar system last month. We just didn't say anything because we thought it would be rude. Chew on that while I go find some goddamn coffee." The pneumatic door hissed shut behind him, leaving 27 stunned Zeltarians in perfect silence. Commander Lisa Blackwood was having a reasonably good day until her communication device exploded with emergency alerts. As Earth's senior diplomat to the Galactic Council, she was used to putting out fires, just not typically before her morning coffee. "What do you mean he told them to shove the treaty up their collective asses?" she demanded, striding down the curved corridor of the summit station. Her aide, a fresh-faced lieutenant named Miguel, struggled to keep up. Those weren't his exact words, ma'am, Miguel clarified, consulting his tablet. He specifically referenced Ambassador Krell's, iridescent ass in the singular. Lisa stopped so abruptly that Miguel nearly collided with her. That's your takeaway from this situation? The anatomical specificity of Thornton's insult? Sorry, ma'am, just trying to be accurate. Lisa resumed her march toward the conference chamber, mentally calculating how many favors she'd need to call in to salvage this disaster. Jack Thornton wasn't even supposed to be leading these negotiations. He was a mid-level analyst with diplomatic training, yes, but hardly the person you'd pick to handle first contact with an empire controlling 17 star systems. Where is he now? She asked. Cafeteria. Apparently he's drinking coffee and complaining about the quality. Of course he was. Lisa rounded the corner to the conference chamber and froze. Through the transparent doors, she could see the Zeltarian delegation engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Their normally composed demeanor had given way to agitated gestures and rapid speech in their native language. This is bad, she muttered. The Zeltarians never lose their cool. Not even during the Proxima Centauri incident, and that involved actual weapons fire. She straightened her uniform, plastered on her most diplomatic smile, and entered. Ambassador Krell looked up immediately, and to Lisa's surprise, his face broke into what appeared to be genuine delight. Commander Blackwood. Perfect timing. We were just finalizing our revised proposal based on your colleague's forceful negotiation stance. Lisa blinked. Revised proposal? Indeed. Krell gestured gracefully to a holoscreen displaying a treaty document. We found Mr. Thornton's approach refreshingly direct. Such passion, such commitment to Earth's interests. Quite impressive. Lisa struggled to keep her expression neutral. So you're not offended? The Zeltarian ambassador laughed, actually laughed, a sound like tinkling crystal. Offended? Quite the contrary. We respect strength in all its forms. But your Mr. Thornton demonstrated that humans are not to be trifled with. We've adjusted our position accordingly. He gestured again, and the holoscreen zoomed in on specific treaty points. Lisa's eyes widened as she scanned them. You're offering joint administration of all mining operations, with equal profit sharing and technology exchange programs? Is that insufficient? Krell asked, suddenly concerned. We can consider further concessions if Mr. Thornton demands them. Meanwhile, in the station cafeteria, Jack sat nursing his third cup of coffee, blissfully unaware of the diplomatic revolution he had inadvertently triggered. His headache had subsided to a dull throb, and he was contemplating whether to resign before or after he was fired for causing an interstellar incident. His contemplation was interrupted when Miguel found him. Sir, Commander Blackwood requests your immediate presence in Treaty Room B. Jack sighed, draining his cup. To sign my termination papers, I assume? Miguel looked confused. I don't think so, sir. She seemed strangely pleased. 5 minutes later, Jack stood bewildered as Lisa showed him the revised treaty terms. I don't understand, he said finally. They're giving us everything we wanted. More than we hoped for. Because I yelled at them? Lisa nodded slowly. Apparently your negotiation technique impressed them. They think it was a calculated display of Earth's resolve. It wasn't a technique. It was a meltdown. Well, Lisa said with a thin smile, let's keep that between us, shall we? The Zeltarians are waiting to finalize the agreement, and they've specifically requested your presence. Jack straightened his tie, still mystified. So I'm not fired? Not today. Thornton, Lisa said, guiding him toward the door. But for the love of everything holy, try not to have another diplomatic inspiration until we've signed these papers. 3 days after what was already being called the Thornton incident in diplomatic circles, Lisa sat across from Vrex, the Zeltarian cultural attaché, in a quiet corner of the summit station's observation deck. Below them, Earth hung like a blue marble against the velvet backdrop of space. I still don't understand, Lisa admitted. By all accounts, Jack committed every possible violation of diplomatic protocol short of actual violence. In human terms, he threw a tantrum. Vrex, a younger Zeltarian with unusually expressive features, nodded thoughtfully. That's precisely what made it so effective. You must understand, Commander, Zeltarians pride themselves on emotional control and diplomatic finesse. So Jack's outburst should have been offensive, not impressive. In our culture, only someone in a position of tremendous power can afford to display such raw emotion. Vrex leaned forward. When your diplomat abandoned all pretense of diplomacy, it signaled to Ambassador Krell that Earth must be operating from a position of extraordinary strength. Lisa almost choked on her drink. You thought Jack's hangover-fueled rant was a power move? A brilliant one, Vrex confirmed. The specific threats were particularly masterful. Threats? What threats? Vrex blinked his obsidian eyes. The hot dog reference, of course. Lisa stared at him. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Thornton clearly implied that humans willingly consume toxic substances as some sort of endurance ritual. And his statement about your species' mind-blowing stubbornness was interpreted as a warning that humans might resort to self-destructive measures if pushed too far. Vrex shuddered slightly. The unpredictability factor alone was enough to make our military advisors recommend immediate concessions. Lisa fought to keep a straight face. I see. The most impressive element was his casual mention of the listening posts, Vrex continued. To reveal that Earth knew about them all along, but chose not to act truly chilling. It suggested a level of strategic patience and calculation that, frankly, we didn't think humans capable of. By this point, Lisa was struggling not to laugh or cry, possibly both. The entire galactic balance of power had shifted because Jack Thornton had a bad day and mentioned hot dogs in his rant. There's more, Vrex said, lowering his voice. Word of the Thornton method has spread to other species. The Arcturian Confederation has already inquired whether Earth might conduct their upcoming trade negotiations. The Arcturians? They've never even acknowledged our diplomatic communications before. Vrex nodded solemnly. They're particularly impressed by humanity's emotional range. Most spacefaring species evolve toward greater emotional control as they develop technologically. Humans appear to have taken a different evolutionary path. Back on Earth, Jack found himself the reluctant subject of intensive study by the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. Analysts pored over recordings of his outburst, breaking down his gestures, his choice of words, his escalating tone. Could you explain again what you were thinking when you mentioned hot dogs? Asked Dr. Felicia Morton, the department's chief psychologist. Jack sighed. I wasn't thinking. That's the whole point. I was angry, hungover, and saying whatever came to mind. Dr. Morton made a note. Fascinating. And this state of not thinking, could you replicate it under controlled conditions? Are you asking if I can get angry on command? For science, Mr. Thornton, and possibly the future of human diplomatic relations. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, species were hastily revising their assessments of humanity. Humans, it seemed, had been drastically underestimated. Any species that could weaponize emotional outbursts with such surgical precision was not to be taken lightly. Zeltarian intelligence reports now classified humans as emotionally volatile but strategically cunning, a combination previously thought to be evolutionarily impossible. The report concluded. Approach with extreme caution. Emotional displays may indicate either weakness or strength. Impossible to determine which until too late. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with an unusual level of tension. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations had gathered for an emergency session to address what was being called the human question. Lisa stood at the podium, feeling distinctly uncomfortable as the sole human in the room. The Council's curved chamber was designed to accommodate various alien physiologies, from the gas sac bodies of the Adorian delegates to the crystalline structures that housed Rigelian consciousness. Distinguished representatives, she began, I understand there's been some confusion regarding human diplomatic practices. Confusion is an understatement, rumbled the vegan ambassador, a massive entity resembling a sentient boulder. 3 of our trade negotiators suffered nervous breakdowns after a human representative described Earth's historical warfare techniques over lunch. Lisa winced. I believe that was an unfortunate misunderstanding. The human in question was merely discussing historical documentaries he had watched. From the back of the chamber, a tentacled Medusan representative waved frantically. Is it true that humans sometimes communicate through ritualistic consumption of fermented beverages until they lose higher cognitive functions? That's not exactly, Lisa began. And these hangovers, interrupted the Arcturian diplomat, are they truly a form of self-imposed suffering to sharpen diplomatic aggression? Lisa pinched the bridge of her nose. This was getting out of hand. Meanwhile, back at Earth's Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, Jack found himself in yet another meeting with bureaucrats attempting to systematize what they now called emotional leverage diplomacy. The key is to appear unstable but calculating, explained Ted Harrington, the department's newly appointed director of human emotional strategy. Ted was the kind of bureaucrat who had never had an original thought but excelled at repackaging others' ideas in government-approved terminology. For the last time, Jack said through gritted teeth, I wasn't being strategic. I was having a bad day. Ted nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Having a bad day is the perfect cover for calculated emotional diplomacy. We're developing a standardized scale from 1 to 10 to rate diplomatic personnel's emotional state before negotiations. Jack stared at him. You want to weaponize bad moods? Not weaponize, Mr. Thornton. Strategically deploy. Ted beamed, completely missing Jack's sarcasm. We're calling it the Human Emotional Status Protocol, or HESP for short. All alien delegations will be informed of the human negotiators' HESP rating before meetings. Jack dropped his head into his hands. This is insane. That's the spirit. Very convincing display of frustration. I'd rate that a solid HESP 7. Back at the Galactic Council, Lisa was making a valiant attempt to demystify human emotions to a deeply concerned galactic community. Humans experience emotions as a natural biological process, she explained. These emotions can influence our behavior, yes, but they're not tactical choices. So the Thornton incident wasn't a calculated intimidation strategy? Asked the Rigelian representative, its crystalline structure pulsing with skeptical light patterns. No, Lisa said firmly. It was simply a case of a diplomat having a particularly difficult day. A murmur ran through the assembly. Then we proposed the establishment of formal protocols, announced the Zeltarian counselor. If human emotional states are unpredictable and potentially disruptive, all species have the right to know what they're facing before negotiations begin. And thus the Galactic Standard for Human Emotional Assessment was born. No diplomatic meeting with human representatives could commence without a formal declaration of the human's emotional state. Color-coded indicators became mandatory on human diplomatic uniforms: green for stable, yellow for mildly stressed, red for approach with extreme caution. The irony wasn't lost on Lisa that the very qualities aliens found most frightening about humans, their emotional volatility and unpredictability, had suddenly become Earth's greatest diplomatic asset. 6 months after the incident that had rewritten the rules of interstellar diplomacy, Jack Thornton, now officially Ambassador Thornton, found himself facing an unexpected problem. No one would argue with him anymore. "Ambassador Thornton, if you feel that the proposed tariff reduction is insufficient, we are more than willing to reconsider our position," said the Arcturian trade representative, nervously eyeing the yellow indicator on Jack's uniform. Jack sighed. "I'm not upset about the tariffs. The indicator is yellow because I missed breakfast." "We can immediately adjourn for a meal break," the Arcturian offered hastily. "We have prepared Earth food specifically calibrated to improve human emotional stability." This had become Jack's new reality. Alien diplomats treated him like a volatile explosive, ready to detonate at the slightest provocation. They brought comfort foods to negotiations, insisted on frequent breaks, and some species even brought what they believed to be emotional support animals. Oh, the Rigelian concept of a soothing pet, a softly humming crystal formation, left something to be desired. In the cafeteria later, Lisa found Jack staring morosely at a plate of alien approximations of Earth comfort food. "Is that supposed to be mac and cheese?" she asked, sitting across from him. "According to the label, it tastes like someone described cheese to a being who had never encountered dairy, using interpretive dance as the only means of communication." Lisa laughed. "The price of fame, I guess. How are the negotiations going?" "They're not. The Arcturians agree to everything immediately. They see disagreement as risking another Thornton event." He pushed his plate away. "I never thought I'd miss being argued with." "Well, you might get your chance soon. The Draconian Collective is refusing to recognize the emotional status protocol. They think it's a human trick." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Aren't the Draconians the ones threatening to blockade the Rigelian trade routes?" Lisa nodded. "The Council's sending you to the mediation next week. Apparently, being unpredictable is now considered an asset." The mediation session with the Draconians proved to be a turning point. Facing a species that prided itself on aggression and refused to acknowledge human emotional protocols, Jack made a bold decision. He deliberately set his indicator to red before entering the negotiation chamber. The Galactic Council observers watched in horror. The Rigelians nearly crystallized in panic. The Zeltarians began recording what they expected to be a historic diplomatic meltdown. Instead, Jack conducted the entire session with perfect calm and reasoned arguments, occasionally allowing just enough edge into his voice to keep the Draconians guessing. By the end of the day, they had agreed to arbitration rather than military action, a previously unthinkable concession. "How did you do it?" Lisa asked afterward. Jack smiled. "They spent the whole time waiting for me to explode. The anticipation was so stressful that they started looking for a face-saving exit. Sometimes the threat of human emotion is more effective than the emotion itself." 6 months later, Jack's new diplomatic title became official, Ambassador of Unpredictable Human Response. His official duties included maintaining deliberately inconsistent emotional indicators and occasionally mentioning hot dogs during tense negotiations. The galaxy had adapted to humanity's emotional unpredictability by creating elaborate protocols and safeguards. Humans, in turn, had adapted by learning to strategically weaponize the very stereotypes aliens had created about them. And on particularly important diplomatic occasions, when Earth's interests truly needed a boost, Jack would ensure he was having just a bad enough day to keep the galaxy guessing, but never quite bad enough to mention iridescent alien anatomy again. Unless, of course, the situation absolutely required it.